MDOT presents the Extra Mile Podcast, Legislative Session.
Welcome into another edition of the Extra Mile Podcast Legislative Session. I'm Paul Catul, MDOT Digital Media Manager, and I'm joined by my co-host, as always, Will Kraft. He handles government and constituent affairs here at the agency. And Will, the 2022 legislative session is done. Sine die was April 5th. I know everybody is very excited about that. And no better way to wrap things up or begin to wrap things up than have the Lieutenant Governor of the state of Mississippi, Delbert Hosemann, with us today. A little information about the Lieutenant Governor. He was elected in November 2019. He's Mississippi's 33rd Lieutenant Governor, and he previously served as Secretary of State. Governor Hosemann, we really appreciate you being here today, and we also like to throw out a little fun fact. You're an avid marathoner, is that correct?
I used to be before I got into politics.
There you go.
And that's all I can do to get through the Capitol. But no, we spent a lot of time. We started early. I guess maybe in my 30s. We ran the New York Marathon a couple of times, Boston. We did what's called the Hood to Coast, which is a 200-mile race with a team. And we really enjoyed ourselves over the years and kind of kept me semi-healthy anyway.
We
Good
found
deal.
out it was a National Walking Day,
Oh, yes.
according to someone's calendar.
Good.
So we thought that was appropriate to
Very
mention today.
appropriate.
Get out there and do some exercise.
I was out running the other day, and a lady pushing a stroller went by me, so I'm kind of slowing down. I don't know, whatever.
Well, Governor, thanks so much for being here. We'll just ask you a little bit about yourself. What drove you to get into politics originally?
I don't really know. We're still trying to figure that out. I had first of all, I practiced law for 38 years, and we had just a tremendous law firm, and there are many good law firms in Mississippi, but we were with Phelps Dunbar. And it was a regional firm here, New Orleans, Houston, Tampa, London, all over. And we had a corporate practice. You know, we represented a lot of businesses in Mississippi. And when they acquired other businesses or merged or expanded in tax issues, those kinds of things. So we were a business lawyer. And then when I was about late, I guess mid-50s, the Secretary of State, Eric Clark, decided not to run. And I had been really, didn't think that our business laws were very good, and they weren't. And, you know, every time I had to interpret them or represent a client, I said, man, I wonder what idiot wrote this. And so I came home and I told my wife, I said, look, I think I'm going to run for Secretary of State, and I'm going to change all the business laws. And she asked if I lost my mind. That was the first thing. And so in my first precinct, the vote was 1-1. So it took a while for me to get out of my own house. But when we did, we were blessed enough to win that election and be hired to do that work. And we rewrote all the business laws in Mississippi. The LLC laws, which now have proliferated. We have over 150,000 of them in Mississippi. Securities laws, charity laws. I was real interested in, which is something we're going to talk about here, in land and how we managed our public affairs. And when I got to looking at it, we have 16 section land and 640,000 acres of it. And so it became a real pilgrimage for me to get that land running right. And so I got it up to, we didn't have any timber. I mean, y'all face this over here. We had no timber plans. Some of them were in crayon. You know, every 16th section in Mississippi is owned by the school districts. Right. And so the top 22 counties, it does not own there because we got that from the Indians under the Dancing Rabbit Treaty. But the rest of it, Thomas Jefferson gave us our state in 1817. He kept out of the 36 sections, he kept the 16th one for education, which was brilliant. And is paying dividends today, but it wasn't paying enough dividends, I didn't think. So I actually got it up to about $100 million a year in revenue from timber sales, farm sales, duck hunting leases, a lot of which had been favorably negotiated.
I think it's up to about 20,000 acres. Does that sound right?
We have 640,000 acres.
Oh, wow. A little bit off there.
Of public lands. And then I got really involved in talking to some people about the fact that they didn't have places to hunt and fish. So we ended up acquiring a lot of public land. We acquired 17,000 acres in the lower Delta, and it's now a wildlife management area. We acquired the mouth of the Pearl River, which had been given to the family I acquired it from for the state. I think with the Spanish land grant.
Well,
So we got like 3,000 or 4,000 acres. You own that now. And then we bought pretty much about half of Cat Island, which you now own.
wow.
And I think in all of those, I was able to either get donations or other monies. I think we spent a total to acquire about 20-something thousand acres, probably about $400,000.
Oh, wow. Well, I know you had many successes, as you just alluded to, in the Secretary of State's office. What ultimately drove you to make that next jump over to Lieutenant Governor?
Well, I had an office on the basement floor, and I thought, well, if I go upstairs, I get another office. So. But the trick was, what happened was you get a decrease. The lieutenant governor is part-time, so he or she, we've had both, make $60,000 a year, and so you're considered to be part-time. That's not accurate. It's, as you well know, I'm sitting here today after the session. So no, it's a full-time job.
Absolutely.
And the Secretary of State's pay was $90,000. So I actually took a cut in pay, which is another issue I had at home. But
I'm sure.
regardless of that,
Oh, wow. Well, so Governor.
let's get to y'all stuff.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, let's talk a little MDOT. It was a really good session for infrastructure. It was a really good session in particular for transportation infrastructure. A lot of additional money for MDOT. Can you just start to break that down for us?
I can, and I was real pleased. We need the road and bridges and the things that we do, and I was real pleased. Brad came by. I've known Brad forever. Just been really a great guy. He was chief of staff for Cindy, chief of staff for Thad, headed the Republican Party, worked here for a number of years, worked for Dick Hall.
That's right.
And I want to talk about Dick in a second. But we had we've had a long personal relationship. I've always admired him and his career and how he's worked. And he said he thought this was the best year that MDOT's ever had in the legislature, and I think that's probably accurate.
Agree.
When we look at what we did there, not only did we get the $2.8 or $9 billion that the federal government is going to give us, and we could have quit there and said, well, victory, but we didn't. We put up the match this year, another $40 million, which you'll need to match your federal money. But then we went further. We got from Brad and Commissioners King and Simmons and Caldwell, we got your list of what you had to do for maintenance and what you had to do for new construction. I've traveled just about every road in Mississippi now, and I know that, for example, Highway 15 is way behind in its expansion, and so is 7 south of Oxford and a number of others. And so we decided that we would accelerate the maintenance program. And so we put another $45 million to bring the 2023 into 2022. And in addition to that, we put in $200 million to, some of which is to advance some of your early work on getting these roads started, which is an issue that I think we all have, which is the timeliness of the delivery of the product. So one of the things I really want to work with MDOT this year is, why are we taking so long to get our products completed? I'm hopeful that we'll look at some things like having construction companies and the different ones y'all do business with. There are a bunch of them around Mississippi. Having them involved earlier. We've discussed that we think we have capabilities within MDOT to do a lot of the engineering work, and I think we're outsourcing about $60 million a year. Well, $60 million would finish a good bit of Highway 15. So we're real interested in giving y'all your head and letting y'all run with the ball here. And to do that, we upped the salaries over here on purpose with malice aforethought to make sure that we could keep and maintain the good engineers and people that work here. And the only other side of that is that having done all of that and spent really hundreds of millions of dollars of Mississippi money, it's time for y'all. It's game time.
That's right. The director,
we've had spring practice. It's time to go play.
The director has already said, with the increased resources comes an increased responsibility. It's time to show up and really show the appreciation
100%.
for those.
Absolutely. We're ready.
And hopefully, obviously, those additional resources will certainly help go a long way.
In addition, we of course, y'all are, it's a kind of a semi-party, y'all, but we put another $100 million in ERBR.
Excellent.
So in
program.
addition to the money that we've already talking about, so that will hopefully be coordinated with y'all, particularly on the quality of the work product and what goes in and whatnot. But hopefully that'll be coordinated with y'all. So that's an additional $100 million for your feeder county roads that'll come in our I thought that was really important that we again come back with the RBR with a significant contribution. So all told, and in addition to all of that, there's $75 million in actual line items for y'all that are actually requested by senators or members of the House for specific items. So you'll see a lot of that going on. I looked at the map, and I was real pleased that Brad brought over the map of what we're doing, and it looks like the 1985 or whatever it was plan. There's every county in Mississippi is fixing to have construction in it. From either you basically all of yours, but in addition to that, the $100 million from ERBR, there's not one county that's not going to have somebody maintaining, paving, or new construction.
That's exactly
Absolutely.
right.
You mentioned Commissioner Hall, one of the main figures in Mississippi transportation history. Did you want to touch on him before we move on?
Oh, yeah. Dick he ran for the House of Representatives, and I thought he was such a neat person. And he ran where I lived, and so I worked on his campaign. Now, this is way back. And then Dick and I had some business relationships and whatnot, and so we worked together during the flood. We were together back whenever that was, 77 or 79. We worked together during the flood, hauling paperwork out of offices and all that kind of stuff, and just have known him a long time. And then when he was a senator, he was, appointed. He was a Republican in a Democratic administration. And he was appointed head of appropriations, which is probably about one of the top 2 or 3 jobs over there. People have always recognized Dick's capabilities and the fact that he really had a leadership role. Then we came back to Dick again when we did the where you have to show your ID, your voter ID.
That's right.
And what happened was to get that, I had to go to the Department of Justice, and one of the things they said was, we're first of all, it's a miracle Mississippi didn't get sued. Every other state got sued. We didn't, so whatever. But as part of that, we came to Dick and your commissioners and asked if they would provide transportation for people to the county courthouse to get a voter ID, to get an ID made. So we put cameras in every courthouse, and MDOT provided, through your services, ancillary services, provided transportation for people. That was a key component to defeat any kind of indication that this would be something people couldn't get. Of course, there was no charge for it. The state provided that, but we also provided transportation through MDOT.
Excellent.
So anyway, our history goes way back, and Dick has been a champion of everything from voter ID to appropriations, and we were honored to have him in his old haunts there in the Senate on Monday and do a proclamation for him, which he got a long-standing ovation.
It was very special. I know he appreciated it. He's made that comment already, how much that meant to him. And selfishly, I must admit, the voter ID initiative, that process will always be one of my fondest memories. I was an intern at the Republican Party while that was going on. My little cubicle was basically made of boxes of signatures. So I just, every day going through boxes and signature sheets.
Senator Fellingame did a lot of that.
That's right.
He did a lot of it, and we appreciate your help on it. But, we never did get sued on that. And now if you told somebody that they didn't have to bring an ID, whether it was a Republican or a Democrat, they'd think that was a bad idea.
It seems strange, yeah. Any other legislation that I know it was a huge session. We had all kind of issues: tax cut, education, teacher pay raise. Anything else you want to touch on? Yeah, we did. We put some money aside for ports. I think that's really important in Mississippi. You are part of the transportation portal. It's rails, which we gave some money to either refurbish or do short-range rails or short rail, where they're not, the big, what used to be Illinois Central and the others. That's right. But we do the small, short parks, short railroad things, and those are very important to Mississippi. The ports are very important to Mississippi. The fact that we can get on the Mississippi River is very difficult. There's only a few spots. Vicksburg has an excellent one. Greenville has one. Natchez is a little bit smaller. Rosedale has one. That's right. And then you have the ports on the coast, which are Pascagoula and Gulfport, which are very, very important and critical to keeping Ingalls and Chevron and the rest of them. So we put some money in ports, and that really, no pun intended, feeds into the highway department. It's true. Mm-hmm. So what we're expecting is that, for example, we've never built the project that freezes liquid gas
liquid nitrogen gas, LNG.
Right.
We've never built that. That's never been completed just south of Chevron. Now, with what's happening with Russia and Ukraine, we have an opportunity to finish that and actually export the frozen natural gas to Europe, which hopefully they will use. The Ukraine thing is just a total disaster. But as part of that, I mean, y'all fit into all of this.
That's exactly right.
You're part of the puzzle, actually.
And selfishly a bit, I know it's something not directly related to transportation, but the Inflex, I know that's a passion of yours. Would you maybe want to talk about that a little bit?
We have been trying to do that for the 3 years I was here and the year before I came to the Lieutenant Governor. So it was started by the local economic developers, and what they wanted to do was simplify the application process where we could hit what I believe is our most important, easy way. We are best used to assimilate like 50, 75, 100-person employers because our workforce, we're fully employed right now, basically. When you're 4% unemployment is basically full. Anybody wants a job can get one.
Pretty good.
So anyway, to do that, and so that we don't plagiarize one company from another, the smaller incremental growth is what would attract and keep people here, young people out of college or like yourself or just companies moving in here. So we wanted to have a program where they could get all of their tax benefits while they're sitting in Ohio deciding whether they're going to come here or not. Inflex does that. It's a great program. It summarizes all of the various tax benefits, and you can sit there. If you tell me how much you're going to pay people and then how much you're going to spend on capital expenses, we can tell you what your tax breaks are.
That's awesome.
Yeah, our economic development, I think that's going to be, no disrespect to anybody else, but that will be a bigger economic driver than the tax relief.
Sure, very well. Yeah. Any other measures? I know, Paul, you have a question. Legislation left on the table.
Oh, yeah.
Steal your question. Anything you're kind
All
of
good.
looking forward to next year?
I think we still have about $400 million of ARP money that we need to spend. We're spending money on water, about $750 million on water and sewer projects around the state. We'll want to match your $40 million next year to keep you in line with your federal dollars that are coming in here. Eventually, that'll be $200 million.
We like that.
And so I think that's it. But I also think some of next year, as we finish out that last $400 million and do some other things, there's some education things that we haven't done. Although we got a teacher pay raise and we got a lot of money for refurbishing our schools, there's some things that need to be touched there. I'm very interested as we're pouring this money, which is your money, into all of these projects that we have measurables. Like, if we're giving you X amount of dollars as MDOT, $200 million, we want to see dirt moving and asphalt and concrete going down and bridges being built.
That's right.
So I think some of what we will be doing will be tracking your progress.
Sure.
Now, we as long as you're performing, we want to be behind you pushing. And if you're not performing, then we need to move our assets to somebody that will. That's the way it was when I was in business, and that's the way it ought to be in public life as well.
Pretty reasonable expectation.
It is. I mean, y'all have had the best year you've ever had, and now, like we talked about a minute ago, it's game time.
That's right.
We need for y'all to perform. And when I asked Brad about performance charts and those kinds of things, we used to have something called a PERT chart. It's program analysis. So what you would do is you'd set time frames, like we're going to bid it by this, it's going to be constructed by this, the dirt's going to move, the environmental by this, the eminent domain by this. So you'd have a whole chart when something is to be done. And I'm hopeful that y'all will come back with those as you prioritize. Okay. You've already prioritized. We basically, the political arm of the state, did not fool with what you designated as priorities. Whatever you said was the number one. There's no politics in that.
Right.
So with that given, then you ought to be able to come back and say, we're going to do Highway 15, or there's a bypass in Port Gibson. I mean, they're all over the map there. But we're going to do that under this process. We're going to acquire the land by X. We're going to do the bids by Y. We're going to have the environmental done by this. So that you have a chart. And then we want to see that chart. We want to see you hitting your achievables every time you do that. And if we sit here a year from now and there's no new dirt being moved around, then we need to have another meeting.
Sure, and that's something we can be excited about, showing our success. Hopefully we come back in a year and quite the opposite end of that spectrum. We can see all this has been done, completed efficiently and well, that's got to be the goal, right, moving forward.
Yeah, you have
No
the
doubt.
standards already. I mean, you know what thickness and what kind of the underground's supposed to be and what the bridges are supposed to hold. I mean, you've already done that.
Real quick, topic of conversation that's out there right now is the brain drain in Mississippi. You can't see everybody here. We're watching on TV, but a lot of young people in the room with us. So what are your thoughts on kind of keeping Mississippi's young talent in the state?
Well, first of all, the reason you stay here are two or three. First is the economic realities. You've got to have a job. If you get out of college or junior college or get a skills set to be a welder or whatever job you're going to do, we have to have a position for you. So if I don't have a job for you, then you're going to move anyway. The second thing you want is a quality of life feature. You want to be, if you're a hunter, you want to be where you can hunt, or if you're a fisherman, or you like the water, or whatever you're a golfer or whatever, we need to have the amenities of a cultural life for you. And there'll be an announcement next Tuesday of a major step on that.
All right.
coming out.
Whoa.
So we need to have a quality of life. And the third one that goes directly into that is your education. Now, you're going to only go where you can educate your children, or in my case, grandchildren. You're only going to be where you can educate your children. Most of that, about 93 or 2 or 3% of it, is done in public education. So we have to have a really good public education. If you want a Catholic education, or you want a stay-at-home education, homeschool, whatever you want to do, we have to have that available for you in Mississippi. And then the last one, which is one we have problems with here in the city, is you have to have a safe environment. So we have to have your job, we have to have your cultural things, the people that you like to live around and associate with in your off-duty times. Then we have to have an education, and it has to be a safe environment. So y'all fall into almost all of those. I mean, MDOT touches all of those particular ones. So it's not like you're in a vacuum and you're just building a road. What you're doing is building a road to the new subdivision where people are going to live. What you're doing is building a road to the new industrial park where people are going to work. What you're doing is building a road to the school system where people are going to go to school. So you're integrally involved in all aspects of that, other than the security part, which our sheriffs and police departments do. But no, y'all need to succeed. For us to succeed as a state, y'all need to succeed.
Certainly. Good to hear that.
I certainly appreciate
Absolutely.
your thoughts on that. I mean, that's very encouraging to hear. I think you're exactly right on all those.
That's good. It's an election in another year or so.
There we go.
Help me out, man.
Well, taking it totally out of the box here, I know you spend a lot of time on the roads, a lot of time traveling around the state.
I do.
Is there a stop in, a hot spot that anytime you're coming through there, I've got to stop in here and get a bite to eat? Anywhere that sticks out? Maybe
Well, there's
back
a
home?
few that I have kind of started to
Sure.
haunt, and
There we go.
I don't want to give too many away, but the Exxon station in Winona has out
right.
in front has a bunch of guys that are sit around in there, I think 24 hours a day. I've never been in there, and they make really good biscuits and sausage in there. And so if you're running around on Interstate 55 early in the morning, which I try to do when I'm driving out to go somewhere, I like to stop by the Exxon and say, how are we doing? What's going on? And I can assure you they will tell you quickly how your performance is. So there are a couple of spots around. One of the things I want to stop in, and will be this year, is our parks. Our parks are in abysmal shape. And we appropriated this past year about almost $40 million to start rehabbing our parks. And that's a place that all Mississippians should be able to stop.
That's
Right. There's like wildlife management where you can hunt or take your child or girl or boy fishing or whatever. And then there are places to stay. All of those are in abysmal repairs. We had the architects take a look at it, and it's about $160 million to fix them. But I want to have it where people stop in their parks. And it's local, but it's also a big tourist destination. People drive through here to go over to Alabama or something. I want them to stop here.
That's right.
So we've got some places that I would like for people to stop, and then some that I do on occasion.
Well, it may be due to COVID or otherwise, but it does seem like just in general, camping has made it like a return to the forefront.
It has.
I see the Delo Water Park is full every time I drive through there. So, I can't imagine what these larger operations.
And ours our pads are broken. We don't even have the electrical hookups for the bigger rigs that you see running around. Those don't work on a lot of our parks. Our refrigerators are broken. There's rot in some of the buildings. It's just not acceptable. And you build that for part of this cultural thing that Paul was talking about a minute ago. If you got a place you can go, and let's say you're not some ultra rich person that can afford a hunting camp or their own lake or something, you got a place where you can take your family. That really solidifies your relationship with the earth and with Mississippi.
I agree.
So we need to have that, and I'm bound and determined that we're going to fix up our parks. We're looking at some match money and some other things that may be able to double that to where we can spend about $80 million this next year.
I certainly appreciate that.
That is good to hear. Governor, we've just got one more question for you. What's the best way for constituents, for Mississippians to contact you?
Call Tom King or
well, I love it.
Or Brad White, Willie Simmons, any of the John Caldwell, his wife Lee's is a county, so you can call any of those, and they will call me right after you get through whatever complaint. Now, if it's something congratulatory, you can call me at the office.
Okay, perfect. That's the best answer we've got on that. Well, Governor, we really appreciate you stopping by to talk to us today, especially, really we're recording this just a day after Siney died.
That's
so before we get out of here, we're going to pat ourselves on the back. Public Relations Association of Mississippi just awarded the podcast, The Extra Mile, an award of excellence. So, thanks to everybody that's involved here at MDOT, and then thank you to the listeners.
Congratulations. Next you'll be on ESPN, man.
Right, absolutely. Well, thanks again, Governor, for being here, and we'll just wrap things up. Again, thank our listeners out there for tuning into the Extra Mile podcast. We want to thank our producer, Katie Hornsby, our editor, Drew Hall. Remember, you can listen and watch each episode by visiting gomdot.com/The Extra Mile. And also be sure to follow us on Facebook and Twitter. All the things we talked about today, we like to update you. At Mississippi DOT is the handle. And as always, remember to drive smart out there on Mississippi highways.